house on Liberty Road. Bowling pin. See, you want it, it looks like a bowling pin. Jury's in the jury box and seated.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. All right, Dr. Lazera. I think where we were, I had asked you, John had mentioned in speaking to you that he had some concern about Michelle Kerr taking Phoebe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You spoke with Miss Kerr, correct?
Yes.
John told you that Michelle actually said to him, stated to him, she wants to take him, right?
I don't remember exactly stated that, but
In a phone call or something, you said?
I don't remember that exactly. But I mean,
Okay.
the bottom line was she wanted Phoebe.
Okay. And Michelle Kerr, well, first off, I guess, how Phoebe comes back in Michelle's life at the end of 2014 is John actually reached out to Michelle and asked about doing Thanksgiving dinner all together, correct?
At the advisement of his best friend, Melody Dishman. Yes.
Okay. That's what Ms. Dishman tells you?
Yes.
Okay. So, and Ms. Kerr says that John called and said, Phoebe wants to see you. Can we all get together, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so she indicated that everything was great, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that there were arrangements for her to see Phoebe some more at Christmas time, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That John actually let Phoebe stay a couple nights with Michelle right around Christmas, correct?
Yeah, she said he had some things to take care of.
And that he said, and so Michelle never indicates that she's contacting John and threatening to take Phoebe, right?
Correct. She did not say that.
And, in fact, she indicated that she can't really take care of Phoebe, right?
Well, she didn't say she couldn't take care of Phoebe then, but earlier, why John had her in the first place, yes, she didn't feel like she could physically take care of her at that time.
Okay. Now, John had filed an injunction trying to keep, or an injunction against Michelle, correct?
Yes.
Michelle did not file any paperwork to try to come take Phoebe from him, correct?
Not yet, no.
John says that Michelle sent him a text. I never want to see your two faces again, right?
Yes.
And he took that to mean him and Phoebe, correct?
That's what he reports to me, yes.
And Michelle doesn't even report that that ever happened, correct?
She doesn't say that exact quote, no.
John is pretty insistent when he talks to you. I guess he's going through the churches and gets to the second church and insists that that was it. It was just the two churches that day, right?
Yes.
You know that that's not true, correct?
Yes.
John also tells you that he salted the house that night that Phoebe died, correct?
That's what he said in the interview, yes.
And we know from his dad and stepmom that that had actually happened days before, correct?
They had said it had occurred days before, but I don't know that they were asked specifically if it occurred that day. But I do know that they said it had occurred days before.
Okay. John insists when he goes to see Father Bill that Father Bill tries to keep the Bible from him, the old Bible, right?
Yes.
You would agree that that is inconsistent with what Father Bill says happens.
Yes, he knew that it was a gift and he did not have any intention of keeping it.
And you ask John about his interaction with Hillsborough County deputies, correct?
Yes.
And you actually read from the police report in your evaluation, right?
Yes.
And you're telling John how long he spoke to them, correct?
Well, I'm telling him the content of what they had documented, which was different from what he was saying to me.
And he insists that did not happen, right?
Yes.
He indicates to you that Father Bill told him what to go tell them.
Yes.
And that he just said what Father Bill told him and then they let him go on his way, right?
Yes, that's what he said.
He doesn't tell you that he talked to him about any mental illness, right?
Correct.
He doesn't tell you that he had told the deputies he used to be bipolar and on 37 medications, but no longer was.
He did not say that to me.
And when you actually read from him the police report, he just is insistent that you have it wrong, right?
Yes, he said it didn't happen that way, that he doesn't remember that part.
In fact, when you tell him that he talked about his family law case, he says, I wouldn't even do that. I wouldn't talk to them. There's no way they would know about that, right?
Well, he said that he didn't talk to them.
And fair to say that's inconsistent with what the deputies say occurred, right?
A lot of things John said was inconsistent.
He told you that he had a fight with his dad that night?
Well, didn't say that there, no. So that was from, I guess, his father or another source.
Well, his father said when John left that night, everything was fine. There was no arguing. Everything was calm, regular night, right?
It wasn't a significant argument because John and he was an argumentative kind of guy. The relationship was not stable. So I believe that his dad didn't see that as atypical for John.
Well, you believe that his dad didn't see that as typical, but what John's dad actually says is there were no arguments that night. Everything was calm, right?
I don't exactly remember it that way.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at Mr. Jonchuck's deposition?
Yeah.
page, may I approach the witness, Judge? I'm showing you. You read wherever you want, of course, but I think it starts there. Let me know whenever you're done.
Okay. Yes, I don't see anything that he documented about an argument.
He said that they were just sitting around talking that night, right?
Yes.
And said that everybody was getting along that night, right?
Yes.
John is the only person that has ever said this story about getting in a fight with his dad over the Bible and being afraid he was going to call the police to Baker Act him and it violating his probation, so he ripped the phone out and left the house, right?
I don't know that he was the only person that said it.
Okay. Well, is there anything that would indicate that Mickey or John Sr. ever said such a thing occurred?
Well, obviously, you just showed me that deposition of his dad, and it didn't say it in there, but I don't exactly remember where I heard that or where I read that. I know John didn't tell me that, so if he told somebody else that, maybe.
Okay. As far as any people other than John, though, you've never heard that anywhere, right?
I don't know that.
Do you need some time to review your records?
No, but I don't know that. I don't know that reviewing, I don't have every piece of paper that I reviewed in this case right here with me.
Would it refresh your recollection if you were to look at Mickey's statement?
No.
Okay. So we all know that the only people at the house that night were John's dad and Mickey and John and Phoebe, right?
And John's mom.
Okay. And then John's mom left earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the two adults that were at the house that night are John's dad and Mickey, right?
At what time?
After his mother left.
Yes.
Okay. And you agree that neither of them said anything about a fight occurring?
I don't know that Mickey didn't. I don't have a statement from her, but...
Would you like to review her statement to the police? Would that refresh your recollection?
I can review it. I don't know that it would...
If it won't refresh your recollection, that's fine.
You can continue.
Yes, it will, or no, it won't. I'm sorry.
I would like you to ask a question so that way I can understand what the...
Would it refresh...
Dr. Zero, you need to answer that question.
I don't remember what the question was.
Would it refresh your recollection about whether Mickey reported any type of argument if you were to review her statement to the police?
Yes, I could review her statement.
May I press witness, Judge? All right, I'm showing you Dr. Lazaro, Kenny Miller's report.
I don't see anything from her.
John tells you that when he was at St. Paul's, he had asked about a child exorcism, correct?
Yes.
Father Bill denies that, correct?
He denies that he's going to do it, you mean?
Denies that John asked about an exorcism.
Yes.
Fair to say when Mr. Jonchuck was speaking with the Hillsborough deputies about 1 in the afternoon or on this January 7th, he was downplaying and minimizing any potential mental illness, correct?
Yes.
John told you asked him about going to Noemi's that night, right?
Yes.
And he said he was there, right?
Yes.
And he said that he took Phoebe because Phoebe was going to have a play date with Noemi's son, right?
Well, he said that when he went there, he brought Phoebe because she has a son, and he was anticipating like staying there and making dinner and stuff. And then Phoebe would be there to play with the son.
Right. So brought Phoebe to play with Jeffrey, right?
Yes.
And this is 9-ish at night. We've been able to ascertain.
Yes.
Okay. And he said that while he was talking to Noemi, well, John tells you that he's sending Noemi crazy text messages, right?
Yes.
He tells you that he's sending her messages wanting to be with her. Let's be together forever, right?
Yeah, romantic nature. Yes.
Noemi indicates that he actually was sending some text messages with strange scriptures in them also, right?
I don't remember that exactly, but she did said he was sending her strange messages that were religious in nature. Yes.
But John doesn't tell you about the weird religious text, does he?
No, he doesn't tell me about that. He just tells me about the romantic gestures.
And when John leaves that night, he tells Noemi that they should be together forever and to think on it overnight, right?
I don't remember that exactly, but
Would it refresh your recollection to review her statement to the police?
if you want me to, yes, I can do that.
approach the witness, Judge?
What was your question?
I was about to ask you whether John told Noemi that he wanted to be with her forever and to think on it overnight.
Yes, that's what it says here.
And that he was sending texts that were out of the ordinary, right?
Right, because they were of a religious nature, and she didn't know him to be religious prior to that.
John then tells you that Noemi tells him she was setting up her prayer room.
I don't remember that, but
In that clip that we just watched, do you remember him saying, yeah, Noemi told me she was setting up her prayer room?
I don't remember that. I don't. He's a little muffled in there, so he could have said that, and I couldn't really hear that.
You actually just moved on from that, right?
I have no idea. If you say that, I didn't remember hearing it even on there. So,
Noemi never indicated that she was in her house setting up a prayer room that night, right?
not in any deposition or anything. No.
And I presume, since you don't remember that he said it, that you didn't follow up at all and ask him to, what do you mean she was setting up a prayer room or anything like that, right?
No, I didn't follow up with that question or that statement.
John tells you that that night when he left his house, he reached out to his mom and was talking to his mom about the ice age coming.
Yes, he did tell me that.
Miss Jonchuck indicates that John called her and asked if they could come stay the night, right?
Yes.
She doesn't, according to her, John never called or texted her about the ice age, right?
She doesn't, no, she did not tell me that when I spoke to her.
Regarding the email that John had sent to Natasha Clare,
Yes.
when was that sent?
January 5th,
What time?
12:41 a.m.
So that's that Sunday night, right?
I don't know what day of the week it is. I just know that it was 3 days before this happened.
Okay. Are you aware that's the same night he had the blow up with his mom?
Yes.
Okay. So at 12:41, he's sending an email asking for amends, correct?
Yeah.
At 3 o'clock, he's waking his mom up out of a stone cold sleep, yelling, cursing,
Yes.
all over the place, right?
Yes.
He takes Phoebe and his cousin, gets in the car and leaves, right?
Yes.
He tells Natasha Clare he's feeling great, right?
Well, the overall message is upbeat. Yes.
Now, John tells you that he's sleeping about 5 hours back then, right?
Yes.
We at least know that on this night, he wasn't at all, right?
I don't know that.
Well, we know he's sending a very thoughtful email apologizing for everything at 12:41, right?
Yes.
And by 3 o'clock, he's into a rage yelling at mom, right?
Yes.
And by 7 a.m., he's sending Brian Moore's text bright and early, right?
I don't remember that it's 7 a.m., but
Would it refresh your recollection to look at when the text from Brian Morse came?
yes.
Can I push the witness, Judge?
Yes.
Yes.
So 7:05 is when he starts sending the messages to his uncle that day, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that first message is, Doug is my father, right?
Yes.
Did you ever figure out who Doug was?
I believe it's like a cousin or something like that.
Turns out that cutting edge phone was pretty dull.
I'm not watching it either.
Virtual wallet from PNC Bank. Just one way PNC is modernizing banking to help make things easier.
So when John's talking to Natasha Clare, he says he's feeling great. He doesn't need any medication. He's done with everything. He's not drinking. He's not taking his prescriptions, not taking anything, not even his blood pressure medication.
Yes.
He doesn't need it anymore, right?
Yes.
Now, you know that that's not true as far as his blood pressure medication, right?
Well, I don't know what his blood pressure was at the time. I know he had a history of blood pressure, but I don't know what it was at that time. So I don't know if he needed it or not.
And we know that John, well, you know that John went to the hospital 3 a.m. on December 29th, right?
Yes.
John never told you about that, right?
No. I don't
In
believe
fact-
I asked about that, but
Okay. In fact, in everything you read, nobody was aware of that until very recently, correct?
I don't know how it was ascertained. I assumed that you had gotten that information.
And that was very recent, right? Well, when did you get it?
I received it very recently. I don't know how long you guys had it, but I received it very recently.
And from all the evaluations and everything you read, John never mentioned to anybody that he was in the hospital that night.
He just popped into the ER for panic, so I don't know how noteworthy that is, but he never mentioned it to me.
Well, certainly if you're trying to fake crazy, you would want to let people know, hey, I was in the hospital for anxiety a few nights before this, right?
I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Okay. And when John went to the hospital, his blood pressure was exceptionally high, correct?
Yes.
And his heart rate was very high, correct?
Yes.
And they told him that he was having some kind of anxiety, right?
Panic. Yeah, he's having a panic attack, they assumed.
And John actually argued with them about this, right?
I don't know if he argued with him about it.
Okay. And that hospital trip was at 3:40 in the morning, is that right?
Yes.
So fair to say you probably didn't sleep that night.
I wouldn't say that. John typically presented, at least from what his father said, even in the past, when he presented with issues, it was always in the middle of the night.
And that's been consistent since he was seeing Dr. Arthur, right?
I don't know if it was with Dr. Arthur. I just know that when his dad was reporting when he was younger, he would do that.
Okay, so his dad said that he's having problems late at night from really young.
When he was a child, yeah, he said that he had always some kind of thing happen in the middle of the night, and he thought it was probably for attention.
And when he was seeing Dr. Arthur, he actually reported then that he was having insomnia, right?
Yes.
And that his anxiety was worse at night, correct?
Yes.
And that he would get paranoid, correct?
Yes.
John also tells you that when he was at the warehouse or the police interrogation room,
Yes.
that he was laughing a lot, right?
I don't remember him saying laughing a lot.
Oh, Judge, I forgot the previous clip that we've played. I'd asked to move into evidence as we haven't had it pre-marked. We're going to do a composite with all the clips.
Any objection?
Same judge.
Okay, received.
Okay. Okay, so I'll move on then. You said you don't recall if you said he
I
was
don't
laughing.
recall if he said he was laughing. I just know that he told me he didn't remember much about it.
He also mentions that a woman comes up to the car when he's in the back of the cop car, and she's asking him if there's anything they can do to save Michael. John told you that, right? We watched that on the clip.
He did tell me that, yep.
You didn't follow up at all and ask him who Michael was, right?
I don't remember if I did, but if you're saying I didn't, I didn't.
Well, John tells you that he doesn't know what she meant when she asked him about Michael.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We know that a female officer did approach John in the back of the patrol car, correct?
Yes.
Officer Hubble?
Yes.
And according to Officer Hubble, she's repeatedly trying to figure out who John dropped in the bridge, who that was, right?
Yes.
John's interpretation is that the woman is asking him how they can save Michael.
Well, I believe he said that was the first thing she said when she got into the car. I don't know that he continued to say that.
Officer Hubble denies asking about Michael, right?
Yes.
Officer Hubble recalls John talking about Michael, correct?
I don't remember her saying that specifically, but I do know that name was in there, and I do know that she had, or that was the impression that he had.
Fair to say, I think you said, well, you would agree that John is essentially responding to the questions that you're asking, right?
In my interview,
Uh-huh.
he's responding to the questions that I'm asking, but in very short answers. You know, that whole interaction there, that's not how those interactions typically go. I ask, tell me about 24 hours, and then they just go and tell me the whole time. I'm not having to ask question after question after question after question like I had to there.
And a couple times, well, there were some instances, right, that John actually did try to elaborate and you cut him off, right?
You said I cut him off on one instance, but there was plenty of time, as you can see, that there was a lot of dead space in there that I had to come up with another question and another question and another question. He could have talked free-flowing the entire time. There was never a time I said, Be quiet, John. I don't want to hear that or anything.
Page is that? It's page 140. At some point in the interview, John actually kind of gets started talking about the voices, kind of what he was experiencing, right?
Well, I asked about psychotic symptoms.
And you're asking John about his experiences at the jail, right?
I don't remember.
Well, at some point you asked John about his experience. I'm sorry.
Of course, yes, I asked about that.
And John is insistent that no jail staff was trying to come in and take care of him, correct?
I don't remember if he was insistent on it. That's something atypical that inmates tell me, that they are not being taken care of. But I don't remember that specifically. No.
And you saw the jail records, right?
Yes.
And those suggest that every 30 minutes or so, either a licensed mental health counselor or somebody is walking by and jotting a little note about what he's doing, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times they said they tried to ask him questions and he just wouldn't talk, right?
Yes.
John reports it as he kept asking questions and people wouldn't answer, right?
I don't remember that.
And so, well, if we could... This one is about 10 pages, Judge, so it might be a little lengthier.
We go from there, Judge?
It's also my impression, Don, that you were not allowing them really to communicate with you on some level. You would see them, they would try to talk to you, but you would not talk to them. Like Dr. Hernandez is a psychiatrist over there. He would say, come see you and something. You would not be compliant with those visits.
That's because when Jessica was with Ms. Freezes,
I don't know all these people that you're talking about. These are your attorneys?
at the time it was told me that talked to anybody that didn't have an ID card. And Dr. Hernandez did not have one.
It didn't have anything on his coat like I do, sort of
He
like...
had a necklace with a clear thing and it had no picture.
He didn't have anything that has name on it? So records from January 2015 when you got there through February 18, 2015, and I think there's more after that. I got a little bit later, but I mean, from the very beginning, you know, you had the nerves, and there was a whole issue with your blood pressure when you first got there. Your blood pressure was high, which you already know you have high blood pressure, and then you would not like take the medicine.
Because they never had been evaluated by a doctor. How are they going to say that I have high blood pressure if the doctor didn't prescribe me medication?
Well, Dr. Kyle, who was the medical doctor, I guess their medical doctor there, I don't know, I haven't worked there, but he saw you at 10:54 on the 8th when we got there. She got there at about 6 o'clock in the morning, so I 10:54, and he saw you, evaluated you, and
He did not.
so even though we wrote a note in your chart,
There's cameras that
yeah,
on.
okay. That's just your response to it. So if I told you that it's documented in the records, you're not going to believe that. Okay. So the whole time you were there, you don't feel like you were seen by a doctor, you don't feel like you were seen by anybody. Who did you think was coming by to talk to you? Because there's a lot of people coming by to talk to you like every day. And even you said, there are too many people coming in here to talk to me. So like you actually saw people and you knew people were coming in there to talk to you, but now you're telling me that nobody came to see you. So why is that?
Whenever they were in there with the guards, blinking in and stuff, because they weren't saying anything. I asked for the date or the time and nobody would give it to me.
Okay.
And then I felt weird the whole time I was in there. I felt like people were reading my mind and that I was going to be hurt or something of that nature.
But yeah, I did see where you said, you know, my lawyer told me not to talk to anybody. So. They said like over and over again you're refusing some stuff. You don't refuse everything. Sometimes you refuse like to eat a meal or something, and sometimes you
But
refuse.
so it's hard to do.
Why were they saying that?
I don't know.
But they would just do it on some meals?
No, we all have another stuff. And then
Okay.
the trustee, they kept trying to not give me a tray or give me a tray that they had done stuff to. Like,
That does happen, John. I'm not going to say it doesn't, so I understand what you're saying.
they put cubic hairs on my food.
That would not be
Other
surprising.
bodily function.
Yeah, that would not be surprising to me if that did happen. So how did you know that that would happen or not? Was there certain trustees that you knew more or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would try to inspect the food before eating.
So when you felt something was wrong with the food, like somebody done something to
I
it,
just
you
put
would
it
eat.
back to the window and eat.
Because you're right, people do stuff sometimes, so it's not, what you're saying is not untrue. So that's the times when you wouldn't eat the meal.
Right.
So other than the hearing voices when you were here, John, you know, because I'm trying to find out where the schizophrenia diagnosis came from. So other than that, and then you felt that people, or you could read other people's thoughts, what other stuff was going on that you felt like, you know, I'm hoping they talked to you about what psychosis is. But was there anything else that was going on? Were you seeing or hearing any other things that made you think that, you know, or that wasn't real, or?
Yeah, like when I was waiting like downstairs to get my blood drawn or something of that nature, I felt like they were all talking about me. I was real paranoid. Like they were out to get me. I thought that they wanted to steal the spinal cord stimulator.
What would they do with it?
I don't know.
So you thought that they were going to like somehow put you under anesthesia and take it out or something? Or?
Yeah. I don't know, put me under anesthesia, just take it out.
somewhere else. Okay. What about seeing anything that was odd or that was not there that other people said, no, I don't see that?
I thought that the people were talking like really fast and you could only hear bits and pieces of what they were saying. And I told Heather that I called those screechers.
Screechers or creatures?
Screechers.
What's a screecher?
Like they were, you could only hear bits and pieces of what was being said.
And did you only hear that here, or were you hearing that when you were outside of here?
Outside of here.
Okay. When did that start happening? When did you have any of these thoughts or anything like that? When did that start happening overall?
That weekend before everything, I started hearing voices again.
What do you mean again?
I used to hear her talk to Dr. Arthur. And so did I really.
What kind of voices did you hear when you talked to him?
Just weird stuff. Talking about my brain and everything was going to be used. Weird stuff. Like, it's been a long time, so it's kind of hard to remember.
But this is like a really important time. Like I would think like in my lifetime, if I ever heard any voices in the 43 years I've been living, I'd probably remember that because it's not common for me to hear voices.
It was common.
What do you mean it was common?
I heard them often.
You told me you said you heard it whenever you were seeing Dr. Arthur, and then you heard it the weekend before killing Phoebe.
I've heard it other times too that I can't recall.
Oh, okay. Would you hear it more or less when you're using drugs?
But,
So when you're using illegal drugs, you hear it less?
yeah.
Okay. why wouldn't you go to church at that time? Because the person at church is going to be the one that does the exorcism, right? No Bible and finding out the origin or anything like that's going to do anything, right? What's that going to do?
I thought reading the Bible could help. Like I was obsessed with it. It was infatuated by it. I couldn't get enough of finding out what it was about. And
How did you find out anything about it, though?
Nick said that there was house down. It was really old. And
Did you look it up on the internet? Did you
yeah.
Okay.
It said Bibler, B-I-B-L-Y-A, and it said that it was 150 million years old.
This Bible is 150 million years old. I don't believe paper was even back then. So anyways, why would that information, when you say you're obsessed with that Bible, why were you obsessed with the Bible? I don't understand. Like, if you felt that you were possessed because you had dilated pupils, or you felt like Phoebe was possessed because she had dilated pupils, why would you then be investigating the origin of this particular Bible?
Well, one of the things that the person was telling me is that if I get the exorcism, I was going to be killed. And
What about your mood, John? How are you feeling emotionally? Where are you at emotionally right now?
All right. So, Dr. Lazaro, you would agree that. I'm sorry. First, I would ask to move into evidence. The second.
Easy.
Oh,
Easy.
oh, thanks, Judge. You would agree that John was talking about the voices. He stopped mid-sentence. And you then redirected him to his feeling, or what his mood generally is now, correct?
Well, we completed the psychotic symptoms that we were talking about at that time. And the next category, as I've talked to you guys about, is mood disorder. So I went to that.
Okay, but he actually was mid-sentence saying, if I didn't get the exorcism, I was going to be killed, and then just like paused, right?
I don't see that there. I don't get that.
Okay. So, you took that as a good time to move on away from the voices, right?
This is my interview, so I ask the questions that I'm asking, what I'm trying to figure out. And if I feel like I'm going to get information, or I feel like I'm being stopped at one thing, then I'm going to move to the next category that I feel that is important, and then I can always look at other things as they come up. But it was very slow, and it was a lot of I don't know. So I'm moving on to something else that maybe I would get more response from.
All right. You asked John about, actually, let me back up. When you first start your evaluation, you you give a little spiel at the beginning, right? Basically, why you're here, kind of explaining the limits of confidentiality and all that stuff, right?
Yes, I discussed that with them at the beginning.
Okay. And you would agree, as a forensic psychiatrist, your role is to be objective, right?
That's my goal, yes.
And you go into the evaluation telling John that one, you're trained to detect lying, right?
Yes, we've discussed that.
And that's not true. You are not trained to detect lying, correct?
I'm trained to detect malingering, yes.
Okay. You are trained to detect malingering, right?
Which for an average person they would know as lying. So I'm talking to an average person that has an 8th grade education, and so that's the word that I use.
Okay, so they're interchangeable as far as you're concerned.
For the average person, yes, they are interchangeable. I could have said faking, lying, or any of those things, but that's the word that I used, yeah.
Okay. And that's actually one of the diagnoses you give, is malingering, right?
One of the causes for clinical concern I had was malingering. It's not a diagnosis.
Okay. And we're going to go back to that. Actually, let's finish with the evaluation for a little bit. So you tell John you're detected to lie, and is it your professional belief that malingering and lying are the same?
We've already had this discussion.
That's an answer.
Sustained.
Well, may we approach?
Sustained, no.
Okay, not a layperson. For a forensic psychiatrist,
Yes.
is it your opinion that malingering and lying are the same?
Same objection.
Overruled.
Lying is one of the aspects of malingering, yes.
Okay, so that's not that it's one of the aspects, or it's the same thing?
I've already said that it's not the same thing. There's multiple different aspects of it. We talked about the 4 different criteria. It's not one word, lying. It's a multitude of factors.
Okay. I was going to move on, but since you brought it up again, let's go back to it real quick. You said that the 4 criteria.
Yes.
Fair to say there are not any criteria for malingering.
There are 4 factors.
Well, actually, there are. It says malingering should be strongly suspected if any
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Malingering should be strongly suspected if any combination of the following is noted.
Yes.
And then lists 4 things, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Which is very different than clinical criteria for diagnoses, correct?
This is not a diagnosis, as I already said. This is a cause for clinical concern. Those are the 4 items that alert you to be looking out for that, but it is not a diagnosis.
Right. And so, although when you wrote your report, you indicated that it was a diagnosis, correct?
No, I didn't.
Did you not have a section in your report titled DSM diagnoses?
Yes, it says DSM-5 diagnoses, and that is one of the items under there.
Okay. But you acknowledge it is not, in fact, a DSM diagnosis.
I've said that many times, yes.
We're talking about the informed consent.
Just so you know, just because I've been hired by the prosecution, because I have, that doesn't change my opinion. So just because they hired me, I can be hired by them. I'm gonna have the same opinion regardless, okay? Sometimes, and it has happened before, I do an evaluation.
I'm
Just
sorry.
so you know, just because I've been hired by the prosecution, because I have, that doesn't change my opinion. So just because they hired me, I can be hired by them. I'm gonna have the same opinion promise, okay? Sometimes, and it has happened before, I'll do an evaluation of the prosecution, and I agree with the defense. So I want you to try to be as honest as possible. I know that this is a thing that's like going to be in court, and what we talk about is not confidential. It's going to be on video and all that kind of stuff. But I want you to be as honest as possible. Part of the reason for that is because I think it's best for you. Part of the reason for that is I'm trained to detect lying, okay? And so that doesn't go good for you if you do lie, because I can tell that. And I will start asking those kind of questions, and it just becomes negative. I don't want it to be negative, okay? Because it's already a negative situation. So I just want you to know that. I want you to know that. And if you have any questions at any time from John, just ask me. It's a very open situation. I don't have, it's not an informal kind of way. I mean, it is formal since I'm asking you questions, but you can ask me questions at any time. And I want you to ask me questions if you feel like you need to. Now, if there's a time when you feel like you don't want to answer a question, you can say, I don't want to answer that. But you have to know, given that I'm a forensic person, that I'm going to make an interpretation of you not wanting to answer that, okay? So everything that I think in my mind is my opinion, and I can say that in court, okay? Regardless of whether or not you think it's true or not, I can still talk about that, okay? And then I can give the basis as to why that is. So this overall works out better if everybody's honest, okay? And then, like I said, if you have any questions, you just ask me. I don't have any problem with that. Now, like I said, I am not your doctor, okay, John? But it's hard for me to separate myself from being a doctor because that's what I do. So I might say something, John, you might want to look into that, or something like that. John, that is probably this, and I might tell you that, okay? But I'm not trying to treat you, but I can't sort of take myself out of that. So that may happen. It might not, but it might. I just want you to know that. And I'm going to be asking you medical questions too, because I'm a medical doctor, and I evaluate that as well. If I feel it's necessary to do any testing, I have testing here. If I don't, I won't. It's not something I do all the time, but it's something that I do sometimes. So just so you know that might happen, and that would just be like, obviously, dependent. And I choose different ones based on different things.
Okay. So you tell John from the very outset that if he wants to ask you a question, if he feels like he needs to, that he should do so at any time, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree, though, that every time he asked you a question, you took that and testified to this jury that he was trying to take control of the evaluation or in some kind of way get around your question, right?
Objection to improper characterization of testimony.
The question that I was saying that I wanted to answer were actual substantive questions, not a question of, do you talk to all your patients like that? However, I did answer that question. Or what's that got to do with all the price of tea in China? I also answered that question. So I did answer those questions. He asked me, what's the relevance of that question? And I went through and told him what the relevance of the question is. So I don't know which question you're exactly talking about that I said, I'm not going to answer your question, John. But there weren't any substantive questions like, what did you mean by that, Dr. Lazaro? Or, I know you talked about that one thing. I don't understand that. Can you elaborate? It wasn't any of that. It was more of a derogatory question rather than an actual question.
And John asks you what the relevance is of one question on day 2, right?
What?
Day 1, did he ask you at all?
I have no idea. You've obviously outlined my interview. I don't remember that. It was in October 2017. I don't remember everything I said there.
Okay.
So
are there any instances that stick out that you recall him asking you what the relevance was on day 1?
No, I don't recall that, but I have not looked through the entire transcript to see if he asked me a question like that.
Okay. And on day 2, John indicates indicates that, or he asked you what the relevance is regarding a question, page 9 if you need to refer, regarding a question from his childhood, right?
Page 9 of my report is your
No, I'm sorry. Do you have the transcript?
No, I don't have the transcript. It was like this much information. Page 9. Are we talking about the dog? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then later, you start to actually just start your questions. He asked you about the relevance of one question, which then you start asking your questions, saying, well, I'll tell you about let me tell you the relevance before, right?
I did start doing that. I don't believe it was after just that one question.
Okay. Do you want a moment to refresh your recollection at all?
You can give me that, but I'm telling you that is not the reason why I started giving the relevance. It wasn't just from one question. It was the whole tone of the interview.
Okay. And the second interview did not go as smoothly as the first interview, correct?
Correct.
And one of the things that concerned John so your first interview's in August, right? I'm sorry, October.
Yes.
Of 2017.
Yes.
Then your second part of your interview is in May of 18, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in November of 2017 is when you did your collateral interviews, right?
I did them during Thanksgiving, yes.
Okay. I thought you indicated November 2nd in your report.
Well, I did multiple interviews over the course of a month and trying to track down people. It was around Thanksgiving time. November's Thanksgiving time, correct?
Okay, so anytime in November.
Yes. Well, I mean, there were multiple different interviews.
Okay. Well, you bill for speaking to Michelle Jonchuck on November 2nd, correct?
I don't remember what the bill said. I remember speaking with her in November.
Okay. And during that conversation with Ms. Jonchuck, you indicated to her your feelings about John, right?
She asked me about that, yes.
You told his mother that you believed he was not mentally ill, right?
Yes.
That you believed he was trying to manipulate his mom and manipulate everybody, right?
That came after she had asked the question about a perceived manipulation. Then I confirmed, yes, that is consistent with a manipulation. Yes, I did say that.
You told her that John killed Phoebe to get back at her, right?
She asked me that, and I said that was my opinion, yes.
And so when the interview started, John told you that he was very upset that you had put these thoughts and ideas in his mother's head, correct?
He didn't say it exactly like that, no.
Well, he was hurt by it, right?
He was angry, yes.
And now you're giving Michelle Jonchuck this information while you were doing your objective interview to gather information about John, correct?
She asked me about it at the end after we had discussed, we had talked 3.5 hours over the course of 2 days. And this is not atypical when I do a collateral interview, is that someone asks me after they've given me the information, what happened? What do you think? And I say, well, you're going to hear it. But I can tell you what I think. And she asked me that, and I told her what I thought.
And your testimony is that that's at the very end of you talking to her, right?
Yes.
So before you ever went to see John in May of 2018, you were comfortable enough with the decision, your opinion, that you were telling his family?
No.
Okay.
She asked me a specific question.
And you indicated that you told her all those things that we went over, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that was in November of 2017, right?
Yes.
So about 7 months before you went back to do the second part of your evaluation, right?
Yes.
And in fact, before you started your first evaluation, you made some statements at the hospital indicating you'd already made up your mind, right?
No.
You did not say that you did not even need to do the evaluation to know that John was not mentally ill?
No.
Did you say that in front of his counselor, Heather Davis?
I don't even know that I spoke with Heather Davis.
Let's talk a little bit about how this works. So when we went to the hospital to do the evaluation, you go in the main entrance, right?
Yes.
And then we go through another door, we go up to an elevator to kind of like a big cafeteria type room, right?
Yes.
And that's the room that we've seen on the TV, right?
Yes.
In order to get up there, there's somebody from the staff that would escort us up, correct?
Yes.
And the room is set up, you're there, Mr. Bolin and Mr. Ellis are there, myself and Mr. Williams are there, correct?
The first interview, yes.
And these guys have their camera set up already while we're trying to get ours set up, right?
I don't know which one set their cameras up first.
Okay. And Heather was up there because she had escorted everyone upstairs, right?
I have no idea who Heather is.
Okay. Did you make a statement to these gentlemen in that room prior to getting started that you knew Mr. Jonchuck was not mentally ill without even doing the evaluation?
Yes.
when everyone was setting up with the prosecutors present, Ms. Davis, Mr. Williams?
No.
Okay. Now, when you're setting up for this event, this is day one of the evaluation, so you haven't talked to any collateral sources, right?
Correct. I just reviewed the entire file.
And you hadn't reviewed any depositions yet, right?
I don't know if I had reviewed depositions by that time. Things are sort of fluid when they come in, so.
I'm sorry, break or no? Okay. Well, would it refresh your recollection? I think you did a quick reference running through in your deposition of the hours you had spent and what they were allotted for, or if you have something there that you could refresh your recollection.
Well, I must have read depositions before because there's lots of depositions that were done in 2015, and by this time I'm seeing him as 2017. So I would say that I probably did review a lot of depositions before I went to see him.
Okay. Well, you did not review a deposition of Genevieve Torres, right?
Correct.
You had not reviewed a deposition of Father Swingrose, correct?
Correct.
You had not done reviewed a deposition of Michelle Kerr yet, correct?
No, those all were done after my first interview, all those depositions.
You had not done a deposition of Cesar Padilla yet, correct?
I've never done a deposition on anyone.
Reviewed a deposition, I'm sorry.
No.
You had not reviewed the deposition from Deputy Rizzo from Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
Correct.
You had not reviewed a deposition from John's mom or dad, correct?
Correct. They were done after the first interview.
Okay. And your statement to the prosecutors on the case is that the information they need to get, that what is really important in this case are the DCF records from when John was a kid, correct?
Yes, that was important.
Yes. You need to break it out? I'm fine. Okay.
So at the time you're there doing that evaluation, you haven't reviewed any of the witness statements of the people that we just went over.
No.
And I had asked you earlier about whether you said those things to John's mom.
Yes.
And you admitted you had.
Yes.
You were also asked about that in deposition and gave a different answer, correct?
I don't believe that's correct.
Page 122. Question. Did you tell line 17, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Did you tell Michelle Jonchuck that you thought John was manipulative, that he killed Phoebe on purpose, and that he did that to get back at his mom? Answer, no.
Well, okay, you can continue. I qualified that a little bit, and I said I didn't say it exactly that way, and I'm unfortunately taking that we already had this conversation in deposition. So when I spoke with her, I didn't say those exact words. I said in the deposition that she may have had a perception about our conversation, and that may have been her perception, but I didn't directly say that, what you just said. I didn't directly say that. She asked me what is going on, because she was very hurt and she was distressed over it. And as we talked about things over time, ultimately, that's what we came to. But I didn't directly say that.
And so you would agree that was not your answer to the jury just a few minutes ago?
Well, I just said again, unfortunately, just taking what we had already done in deposition, that is not what I told them. I said that, taking into account that we had already talked about that in a deposition, and that was wrong to do, I guess.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
You dispute indicating that you had already made up your mind about John's mental illness before you did your first evaluation, right?
Yes, I would never have spent all this time interviewing him if I already thought I knew the answer.
Okay. But we know for certain by November 2nd you made up your mind because you told Michelle Jonchuck that, right?
I told her her question. I told her an answer to her question. I didn't give her everything, all the data. I gave her the answer to her specific question as it related to her.
Now, part of your role as a forensic psychiatrist is to focus on the issue you were asked to render an opinion on, correct?
Well, I mean, that's obviously one of the things I have to do, yes.
And you stated to the jury yesterday the definition of legal insanity in Florida, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that it requires a mental disease, defect, or infirmity, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that that mental disease, defect, or infirmity has to be the cause of why the defendant does not understand the consequences or what he's doing is wrong, right?
Yes, yes.
After you determined that Mr. Jonchuck did not meet that first element, that he did not have a mental illness that would qualify, in your opinion, right?
Yes.
You continued to bill the state of Florida for about 175 more hours, right?
I have no idea how many hours after that.
Well, actually, as of August of 2000, or I'm sorry, September of 2018, you had about 130 hours worth of work, right?
I don't remember.
You went through it in detail in your deposition. What day did we take your deposition?
I don't remember the day we took my deposition. We had 2 different days, I know that, but I don't remember what the exact day was.
Okay. So you got a copy of your depo right there in front of you?
No.
Is
Oh, is this it? Oh, sorry.
I gave her.
Sorry. Yes, I have it right here.
Okay. August 30th, does that sound right?
That's what's on the paper. Yes.
Okay. And turning to page 44, did I ask you to do a rundown of how much
Yes,
time
you
you had spent on that case at that time?
did. Yes, you did. I remember you asked me to go through each one of the billing sheets that I had there, and so I did that.
Okay. And so at that time, so now we're actually September of 2018.
Well, this was August 30th, 2018.
You're right. Let's look and see what you had done by the time, by November 2nd. Let's add up those hours.
Ready for your afternoon break, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah. Are you wavering and vacillating? You can go a little bit more? You tell me. A little bit more? Okay.
About 99 hours as of November 1st. Does that sound right?
If that's what you're calculating, that sounds fine.
Okay. And you testified yesterday that since then, you've billed over 300.
For the whole case, not since that time, for the whole case, so overall.
So, right, over 200 since that time.
If you're saying that was 99, yes, that 99 plus 200 is 300.
Okay. And so on November 2nd, you had already made up your mind that John did not qualify for count 1, but regardless, you continued to work on the case, correct?
Well, at the time when I spoke with Michelle, I told her that she was not the reason that Phoebe died. That was the primary issue that we got to at the end of the conversation. Michelle had thought she was the reason that Phoebe died. She was having very many mental problems due to that. She was seeing a psychiatrist because of that, and I wanted to tell her it was not her fault. That was where that came from.
All right. And actually, I want to, before I forget, because you just mentioned it, Michelle told you she was seeing a psychiatrist before that. Michelle has been seeing a psychiatrist well before Phoebe was born, correct?
I have no idea that she was seeing a psychiatrist before Phoebe was born. I know that due to this, she had an extreme decompensation, and she was specifically seeing a psychiatrist to process this death.
You are aware, certainly, that she was seeing Dr. Arthur back in 2012, right?
I know that she was seeing Dr. Arthur at one point, and she stopped because John told her that Dr. Arthur didn't like her, and so she had to go see somebody else.
And in fact, Michelle actually told you that she wasn't seeing a psychiatrist before this happened to Phoebe, right?
I don't know that she said that. All I know is because of this, it caused an extreme decompensation, and she was seeing Dr. Arthur specifically due to this incident. So I don't know. I don't have her medical records to know that she was not seeing him prior to that. I do know at one point she was seeing him, and she said that John said that he didn't like her, so I know she was seeing him at one time before that, but I know specifically she told me she was seeing him due to this.
Well, and you reviewed some DCF records in the case, right?
Yes.
And one of the DCF reports you reviewed was DCF was involved because Michelle Jonchuck was using drugs when she had Phoebe, right?
Well, I know that, yes. I don't know exactly if she had Phoebe at the time when she was using. I do know a tox screen came up positive for her.
Okay. And so DCF was investigating Michelle Jonchuck's drug use, right?
It was a subject of concern, yes.
And during that DCF investigation, they obtained records from Dr. Arthur, correct?
I don't know if they obtained records for her specifically. I wasn't focused on her. I was focused on John.
Feel free to take your time, refresh your recollection, doctor.
What am I refreshing my recollection on?
Do you need the records? Did you want to review I thought you said you weren't sure if they had checked Dr. Arthur's records on Michelle.
I don't know that they did that. I was again focusing on John.
I'm sorry, doctor, my question was, would it refresh your recollection to review the CPI records about whether that was reported to DCF back in 2012?
Whether what was reported, that Miss Jonchuck was seeing Dr. Arthur?
Correct.
I would have to look at that because, again, my report was focused on John, so anything about his mom's treatment as it relates to CPS records, I don't have in my report about John.
All right, let me grab you a copy. May I first witness, Judge? Yes. Here's the whole thing if you need.
Oh, I don't know, you just want me to answer that one question.
Yeah.
Did you want me to say it out loud or just say yes?
Right. Does Ms. Jonchuck indicate back in 2012 that she's seen Dr. Arthur?
It says Dr. Arthur stated he only sees Michelle Jonchuck twice a year and stated he prescribes her medications for her bipolar disorder. Yes.
And so 2012, we can all agree, is before Phoebe's dead, right?
Yes, it was March 2012, looks like there.
So I think where we were at, we got about 99 hours as of November 2nd, and then ended up with over 175 hours, right? I'm sorry, over 175 more hours, correct?
Yes, from 99, yeah.
Okay. And the time, as of August, you had, August of 2018. As of August 2018, when we were discussing the hours and the time that you had spent.
Yes.
That included reviewing all the initial discovery, right?
Yes.
Summarizing all of that in your report, correct?
Yes.
Conducting the collateral interviews, correct?
Yes.
Driving up to Gainesville, right?
A couple times, yes.
So Gainesville there and back 2 different times, right?
Yes.
Writing up documenting the content of your collateral interviews, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we talking about everything before August 30th, or is there another date that I'm supposed to be comparing it to?
Well, August 30th because we got the depot date, so I was going from
Okay.
August 30th.
Okay.
Okay. Total, I believe what you had indicated yesterday, you agree that the state of Florida has paid you more than $45,000 to be a witness in this case.
I don't know the exact amount, but as I said, it's been over 300 hours by now, but a lot of that has been in recent times during this trial, so it has not been billed yet.
Okay, and that's so I was going to ask you that. You're at $150 an hour, right?
Yes.
Does that over 300 that you stated include the entirety of last week that you sat up here to watch the trial?
Yes.
You agree that since 2008, prosecutors in Florida have paid you close to $700,000, correct?
I have no idea what the amount is. That is since I've been in practice? Or when has that been?
Right.
Okay, since 2008. Okay, yes.
Sound right?
I don't know how much it is. If you say that, then I'm sure you guys got numbers someplace. Yes.
And so, since you conducted all of your work, so from August of 2008 until now, you have billed more hours than from when you came on the case until August of 2018, correct?
I don't know that. How many hours were as of August 30th?
It looks like 134.
134? Yes, and it's been more since that time, since was before that time, yes.
Okay. Now, also, you were retained on this case years before you ever provided any material, right?
No, I don't believe so. I was retained March 28th, 2017. I don't believe that was years before because I saw John months later. I don't believe that I was retained years before. My retention letter says March 30th, 2017. I believe I was hired years before that.
Okay, I apologize. March 17th of 2000.
March 30th, 2017.
Okay. Let's, all right. Go, oh. All right. Dr. Lazaro, let's go back a little bit towards your, back to your training and experience if we can.
Okay.
The first time that, well, let me ask you this. What's your undergraduate degree in?
Human nutrition and dietetics.
Okay. And then your master's was also in dietetics, right? In human nutrition.
Correct.
Okay. The first time that you specialize in psychiatry is in your residency, right?
Yes, once I graduated from medical school in 2002, we start to be a psychiatry resident as of that point. So July, I guess, 2002.
All right. And your residency program contained no forensic psychiatry, correct?
Well, it contained classes, but not an actual clinic or forensic psychiatry clinic or anything. Our forensic program started with me. So I was the first person in the forensic program. So prior to that, we had different professors and things to come in to teach us about forensics, but we didn't have a specific forensic psychiatry program at that time.
And your residency had no forensic work at all, correct?
In our moonlighting, there was forensic work, but not as a part of our normal clinical experience. No, it was moonlighting.
Well, and that moonlighting was not considered forensic, correct?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is forensic. It's civil forensic. It's not criminal forensic, but they didn't lay it out that way, or at least I didn't understand it to be that until way later.
So that's page 34. 34.
Middle, starting page 31, 13.
Is it 234?
No, 35.
Remember, this is when it's in 3 different days.
Josh, can we take a perhaps afternoon recess?
Sure. We'll be in recess till 3:20, 15 minutes. Thank you.